So greetings to all of you. Talk about samadhi today, because samadhi is something that's very important in this path of sila, samadhi and panya, this virtue, collectedness and wisdom. This quality of samadhi, this collectedness, firmness of mind, it falls in the middle. So when our sila, our virtue, is well kept, our samadhi is well established, then this will develop into wisdom. So we set our hearts on cultivating this quality of samadhi. Even though there may be loud sounds outside of us, and there may be a lot of these, still we are able to bring our minds together, bring them into a state of peace, and we don't allow them to become chaotic and stirred up due to these external sounds. It really means that we don't send our mind outwards towards them. We don't send our minds up or down, to the front or to the back, but rather we have mindfulness there, knowing the breath, or knowing this word of Buddha. You can just use one of those objects and that's okay. And when we do this quality of samadhi will appear and grow in the mind, bringing the mind to a state of peace and stillness. And then when we sit, we won't be annoyed by these sounds. Do we still hear them? Well, we do, but we're not interested in them, and so the mind doesn't get annoyed by them. The mind is in a steady state. It's reached one level of peace already. And what this shows us is that our practice is bringing results, that the mind is coming to a state of stillness, and that this is something that we're able to do. And so we can be proud of that fact, that we can do this, that the mind is starting to become calm, that we are starting to gain an understanding into the methods of the practice that work in bringing our minds to peace. And so we should try to take a note of this, to put this in our memory. What is it that we did, that when there were all these loud sounds around us, we were still able to bring the mind to a state of peace? So we should remember that feeling that we had and that object that we used. Remember that, and we can bring it up again. That right before I could do that, there were all these loud sounds, but I could still keep my mindfulness with me like this. Take a note of that. We should put it in our memory and recollect that. And carry on cultivating that, carry on developing that samadhi until we're skilled at it. So when we've trained in samadhi already and the mind has been brought to a state of peace, then this will develop into wisdom. And today there was someone from Singapore who's staying at the monastery who asked, well, when the mind is peaceful already, it's not stirred up, it's not chaotic, then what do we do to give rise to wisdom? Well, this wisdom in the Buddhasasana, in Buddhism, it's the wisdom that brings us to letting go of our attachments, to abandoning the sense of self. So when the mind is peaceful, when there is mindfulness there within the mind, then we'll be able to see the way that the mind proliferates outwards. And the mindfulness will be up in time with that. It'll be able to keep up with that and know it in time. Whether these creations of the mind are good or bad, we'll know that they are all changing and inconstant. They're all stressful and they're all not self. They arise and cease. And when we see this with clarity, then this is the gaining of wisdom. But sometimes, however, we have mindfulness and samadhi, but they're just not enough. When we meet with a sense impression, then the feeling of me and you, myself and them, arises. And there's a feeling of anger, a feeling of hate, a feeling of aversion that comes up within the heart. And so this comes from this perception or this feeling of us and them, me and you. The mind separates out. But we need to contemplate at this point in order to get our minds to accept the truth. And this is what Ajahn Chah taught as well. He said that when we have these feelings, we should contemplate so that wisdom arises. So, for example, we can think about this body, how we normally see the body as being me, but then we can separate it out into the elements, earth, water, fire, and air, and see how these things are separate. And then we can ask, well, is this bunch of earth, water, fire, and air the same as others? And so is there really a difference between me and them? Separate out the elements, separate out the khandhas in this way. But if that's not working, we can use other methods. We can try visualizing fire burning the body and burning it down, and what's left then? Or we can try slicing up the body or getting a saw and sawing it apart. Whatever methods work in line with our own mindfulness and wisdom. So we do whatever we can, whatever works, to be able to break the body down until it becomes more and more refined and subtle, and then it goes into emptiness. And we see how there's no me, there's no you there. So when we contemplate in this way, eventually we can see emptiness. And this is wisdom that is cultivating samadhi. Or we can use the way of panya vimutti, this liberation through wisdom. And some people, however, are more skilled at samadhi. Some people are more skilled at contemplation. When they contemplate, then they see into not self, they see into emptiness. So whatever it is that we're skilled at, that we have an affinity towards, then we should use that method and just carry on doing that frequently until we become more and more skilled at it, until our samadhi becomes firm and then wisdom grows. And when wisdom is there, then we can contemplate into the body even more, which then brings more stability, firmness to our minds. So these two qualities of samadhi and wisdom, they help each other out. And when our wisdom is good, then our sila, our virtue, will grow as well, that we're better able to be composed in our acts of body and speech. And so it's this whole path of sila, samadhi and panya that we're walking on the marga, this path to seeing the Dhamma. So the sila, or virtue, it's a kind of an order that we use to be able to live with each other in peace. We can live together in society. So like the laws that we lay down in various countries. But why do we need these laws? Well, it's because the people in those countries don't keep sila very well. If everyone had sila, if everyone had kindness in their hearts, then these laws wouldn't be necessary. It's like in the Vinaya, the monastic code of conduct, that there are many, many different rules or points in that Vinaya. But during the initial phase of the Buddha's dispensation, he didn't lay down any of these rules, because all of the monks under him were arahants already. So we need to understand what the purpose of keeping sila, or keeping the precepts, is. And that's for the arising of samadhi. Because really this quality of intention, that is sila itself, that is virtue. So it's like when the monks take up the practices and the precepts of a monk. And one of those precepts is to not drink the blood of a human, that if a monk does that, it's a very hard offence. But what if a monk has problem with their teeth and there's blood coming out from the teeth and they need to swallow that? Well, does that count as drinking the blood of a human? Is that an offence then? And Venerable Ajahn Chah said that, well, it depends upon one's intention, and in that case, one doesn't have the intention to drink the blood of a human. Really, the reason for that rule is that if a monk were to drink the blood of another human, then that would be something very frightening, something that people would get scared by. But in this case, it's an illness that they have, so it's not a problem, that this depends upon one's intention. So we should understand that keeping the precepts, that depends upon the intention that we have. And that's really the principle of sila, is to do with our intentions. And so this quality of samadhi, this is something that we should do until we're skilled at, even though there are sounds about us. And we can ask ourselves the question, well, is it the sound that's annoying me, or am I annoying the sound? So we train ourselves until we're skilled, cultivating our hearts little by little, and in the end we'll gain peace, and this wisdom will grow little by little as well. We'll gain an understanding into how it is that we train this mind. Then the mind comes into emptiness. It doesn't attach to anything anymore. It separates out the elements, gains an understanding of this body, and the mind becomes empty. And at that point, there's no me or you, there's no us, no them, no anger, no hate. And who is the one who could be angry or hateful? They're just not there. So may you set your hearts on this way of practice.